It has been frustrating over the last couple weeks to watch the Trump campaign struggle once Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden at the top of the Democratic ticket. The Trump campaign needed something to regain the momentum in the race. And thank you, Kamala Harris, for providing that something today with the selection of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as vice president. Yes, I know you're saying Tim who? Well, you're going to get to know Tim Walz really, really well, or you better get to know him really, really well. I don't put the responsibility for that on you. I put the responsibility for that on the Trump campaign, because this is such a layup. Now, I might be out of touch, but I cannot fathom that America has reached a point where if it is even remotely informed about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, that it would pick that pair to be the president and vice president of the United States over Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. I know Donald Trump has a Trailways bus full of baggage with a lot of people on the left, and J.D. Vance is weird. By the way, that moniker came from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who is not weird, even though I'm saying he thinks he's not weird, even though he has endorsed, let me see, anything that I would consider weird? Well, he thinks the Electoral College is outdated. He called states that ban transgender surgeries bullies. He does not believe that parents should be told that their kids want to transition from male to female or female to male. He is anti-school voucher. He is pro-DEI. And he thinks that the riots that took place in his state in Minneapolis in the aftermath of George Floyd's death, which included Tim Walz telling authorities to pull back so rioters could burn down a police station in Minneapolis, he thinks all of that was, while painful in the short term, really a good thing in the long term. Here was Tim Walz during those riots talking about the destruction that was, I guess, just one step backward and two steps forward.
A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at. This is a moment of inflection. It's a moment of real change. It's a moment that those folks who are out there demanding this are not going to take a commission or a report. They're going to want fundamental change. And that is what I think, that's one of the exciting things in the midst of all this. You can feel a sense of optimism coming back.
Yes, as those cities burn and people die like David Dorn in St. Louis. And people who had worked their whole lives to establish small businesses only to see them brought to ashes on the ground. In all that, you could feel a sense of optimism. Yes, and lawlessness too, and anarchy and chaos. And that is what Tim Walz thinks is good. And that is what Kamala Harris thinks is good. And that is what people on the left think is good. They think we ought to burn America to the ground. And that every foundational value on which our country began is, well, count it up, racist, sexist, misogynistic, emblematic of colonizers. We're a bad, evil, terrible place, and we never should have been established. And so the only way to fix it is to tear it to the ground and build it back up in their socialist utopia. Oh, wait, don't say socialist around Tim Walz, because Tim Walz has a really interesting view of socialism. He was one of the white dudes for Harris on the Kamala Zoom call the other day. He was just fine with the fact that Kamala backs, before she issued a press release saying she didn't back it anymore, she backs open borders. She backs Hamas. She backs a lot of crazy radical things. And Tim Walz was on that call, and he didn't take a breath in about 4 minutes, where he endorsed every one of her positions. And a couple of the things that he said were, how great it will be when Kamala Harris, a black woman, can kick the clean it up butt of Donald Trump. So he sees life through an intersectional lens. But his most interesting comment on the call was what he said about socialism, which has never worked in any other country around the world. It is not working in Venezuela right now. It does not work in Russia. It has not worked in any country before. It has not worked in China. The communism, socialism, Marxism, all are first cousins of each other. But Tim Walz says this about socialism.
Don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Just do the damn work.
Just do the damn work. Just build cities and burn them to the ground, build them under capitalism, burn them to the ground under communism, socialism, Marxism, because one person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. I suppose. Did I say thank you to Kamala Harris yet? Did I say thank you to Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and AOC and all the people on the Democratic side of the aisle who were super happy about Tim Walz's selection as vice president on the Kamala Harris ticket? I'm very excited about it. I'm super excited about it. And I want Nancy Pelosi to pause between swigs from her vodka bottle to continue to say things like this over the next 90 plus days as we approach the election in November.
Tim Walz, I know very well. He served in the House. To characterize him as left is so unreal.
Boy, that was a long pause.
He's right down the middle.
Oh,
a Heartland of America Democrat. And he was the chair of our Veterans Affairs Committee. And I don't want anybody to forget that.
He's right down the middle, Tim Walz. He wants to trans the kids. He wants to defund the police. He's right down the middle. Just a regular, normal Democrat. Yeah, well, now he is, because the Democratic Party has clearly been captured by its leftist wing. What happened to Josh Shapiro? I mean, the announcement tonight, the official announcement tonight, is in Philadelphia. Everybody thought that meant the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro, who got elected with 65% of the vote, who's kind of a white Obama. When you hear Josh Shapiro talk, he clearly is channeling his inner Obama, trying to sound like Mr. Hope and Change, reincarnated with 2 terms as president of the United States on the runway ahead of him. Josh Shapiro was not rejected because he's too ambitious. Josh Shapiro was not rejected because he would provide too much of a rival to Kamala Harris and too much of a perhaps picture of competence in the shadow of her utter incompetence. There is one reason and one reason only why Josh Shapiro was not chosen. Here's Josh Krashour, formerly of Axios. You see him on Fox News all the time, explaining why Josh Shapiro, governor of a swing state the Democrats have to win the election, was not picked, and Tim Walz, governor of a state the Democrats have not lost since Richard Nixon ran for re-election in 1972, was chosen.
There may have been some hesitance about making too much of a history-making ticket by picking Governor Shapiro. That could have been a good decision or a factor in their decision. I don't know. I think the bigger factor is that the anti-Israel forces are alive and well and very outspoken within the Democratic Party. And they were, even before Kamala Harris was on the ticket, the Biden campaign was worried about disruptions in Chicago. There's an anti-Israel march that's going to be taking place during the convention that's going to get a lot of attention. So I think the division between the squad and the anti-Israel folks in the party, and by the way, the delegates are a notch to the left to the average Democratic voter. So the prospect of Josh Shapiro getting booed, of left-wing activists heckling the running mate, that would have been really ugly. And there was a real risk that could have happened. So I think you can't discount the discrimination and the anti-Semitism factor.
Let's be clear on this. Kamala Harris did not cave to the anti-Semitic wing of the Democratic Party. Kamala Harris leads the anti-Semitic wing of the Democratic Party. The other squad members and Bernie Sanders and Tim Walz's are just following in the footsteps she wants to chart. This is her first big decision. She hasn't had to answer a single question in 17 days as the Democratic nominee. By the way, she is officially the Democratic nominee now that they did their little virtual roll call last night. They are stuck with her, and they are stuck with this terribly bad decision, which she didn't make in a vacuum. She made it with Pelosi's blessing, with Obama's blessing, with Schumer's blessing. This is who the Democratic Party is. If you are Jewish, if you are a supporter of Israel, I don't know how you vote for the Harris-Walz ticket. If you want the border closed, if you don't want terrorists released into the United States, and we now have proof that they are releasing terrorists into the United States. I'll get to that later in the show. If you want domestic energy production to amp back up,